Oh, you explained it completely fine. Videos 10 minutes, the other one. Just like some of the major highlights. Oh, just something like an added.
You'll see a bunch of them. You got until Monday. You'll see a bunch today, starting with James. Matt, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Matt, I can't hear you guys. Okay, why can I not hear you guys? Make sure I got all this stuff right. Same as speaker, same as speaker. This on. Okay, Matt, now can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, we've got this going. Good. Okay. All right, we'll start with Jane this morning. Since she's already presented, I'm just going to kind of kick this off for her. We, on the other day, she had all her stuff and it was all done, but it was not being shown correctly in that her video was pretty bad. So she's gone through and remade her video. So we'll kick it off with that and then we'll move on to the next group of people. Okay, so Jane, where's your, how do I get to your art station?
So I wasn't like.
Okay, so I'll just go straight to your art station. Art station. Search artists. Fingers. Search artists. Name. Stop being difficult. How many times do I have to sign in? Oh my God. Jane Anderson. Okay, I'm assuming it's this first one right here. This is really funny. I am playing YouTube through.
It's not that easy, but Grammarly can help.
I'm playing this through YouTube onto Zoom, back to YouTube. Yeah, it's a little crazy. Okay, so Jane, this is. So this is 3 minutes, normal. I have hit pause like 16 times. If you don't take a chill. Okay.
Hi, my name's Jane Anderson, and welcome back to the crypt level.
Okay, is everybody online able to hear pretty good?
Yeah.
Does the picture look okay?
It's looking good on my end.
Okay. Looks like Sam's got a bunch of delay.
So over the past couple weeks, I found some tutorials on YouTube that helped me out and added some much needed depth to my level. So, to summarize what all I added, I imported a different character that's not just the Unreal Mannequin, and I also manually set up some animations for her, so she'll run around and she'll cast spells and things like that using State Machine and blend spaces. And then I also added some ambient sound to the level and some environmental sound effects. Like when you open doors, they'll creak when they are opened. And then I also added a player voice and then some added functions to her 3 variables, her health, stamina, and mana. So, when you hurt your character enough and go below a certain threshold on her HP,
I'm gonna need some aid, and fast.
she will let you know that she needs you to attend to her health. So how you do that is you can heal yourself with a spell, or you can grab one of those health potions over there. So she can heal herself with this spell here, and it's got a nice emitter, as well as an accompanying sound effect. Now you can only do that so long as you have enough mana to do so.
I can't cast that without more mana.
And if you're out of mana, you obviously can't cast the spell, and your character is going to tell you that. So, that's HP and mana. So just for some more space, I'm going to pop out of the crypt here into no man's land, and I'm going to test out the sprint function. So her stamina will deplete when she sprints, and you hold down the left shift key to sprint.
Whew, I'll need to rest up before I can sprint like that again.
And when you're out of stamina, she'll let you know that she's out of stamina. Luckily for her, though, her stamina will actually regenerate over time, or she could use a potion to solve that problem as well if she's in a pinch. But that's pretty much the basic overview of the things that I added to my level this past week. And if you're interested in a breakdown of my code or what programs I used, go ahead and you can watch the longer video about this level. So thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something. See ya.
Okay, so the longer video is this. We got 10 minutes. Did you change anything on here?
Hello and welcome back to the crypt level. So for this video, I'm just going to go over in more detail what all I added this week via some YouTube tutorials. So what did I add? I added sounds for the player, the environment, and some ambient sounds. I added a imported character along with accompanying animations. I added a sprint function, and then I also added a spell function. So to get down into it, for the character and its animations, I imported a character off of Mixamo, and the animations also came from that site. And this character in particular is called Eve, and it was made by Jay Gonzalez. I followed a video by Dev Squad. I followed a string of 3 videos by Dev Squad from their creating a role-playing game series to get her in here. So if I pop out of my game for a minute, so this is my little folder that I made, and so then here is the Eve model, and then I have a blueprint for her animations, and then I have a blend space, and I'll go over that in a second. So if I open up her blueprint, you see that I have a state machine and then the output pose, and the output pose is just whatever pose that she's using at any given time based on some conditions. So if I go over and look at these states, I have 3. I have idle, walk, run, and casting. Idle is if she's not moving at all, walk and run is if she is moving a little to a lot, and then casting is determined by a Boolean. And so what determines what animation she's using at any given time is these little transitional nodes here. So for example, going from idle to walk and run, if you open that, her speed needs to be greater than or equal to 10, and I just used 10 because it was just a low number. And so if I go back here, and you look at casting, for example, that's just determined by a Boolean. That's just, is she casting? No, so she's not going to be using the casting animation. So that was pretty simple. The walk and run node is just a little different than the other states because it uses a blend space. And what a blend space is a kind of visual graph representation of kind of spliced together animations. So if I turn on the names, so down here we have our little graph, and it's got on its X and Y axis, it's got speed and it has direction, and then that determines what animation she's going to be using. So if I look down here at the bottom where speed is 0, she's going to be using standing animations for the idle. If her speed is about half, then she's going to be walking. If her speed is full, then she's going to be running, and variations of those depending on what direction she is moving. And you can actually pan around the blend space to get a preview of what it'll look like when she's running around. Of course, I don't have a joystick right now. I'm using just a mouse and keyboard, so it'll look a little bit more rigid. But if I were using a controller, this is pretty much what it would look like, where you have that movement nuance. So basically, a blend space is kind of a visual animation gradient. So if I pop out of that, I'll just kind of run around and see. So whenever I run around, the animations that I put in there will play. And I've just kind of popped outside my crypt for a second, so I have more space. So she can do that. And also, she has, since I have that one-handed casting state, she can cast a spell. And it's a healing spell, and so if her health falls below a certain amount, then you can heal yourself, and that way you have a reaction for damage. And that is set up in the third-person character blueprint over here. So it's an input action where when you press the 1 key, it will cast the emitter, and at the cost of some of your mana, it will restore about 15% of your health. And here's the emitter, and here's that casting boolean. So if that boolean is set to true, then she'll play the animation. If it's set to false, then she won't. And she won't cast the animation and cast the spell or play the animation if she doesn't have the mana to do so. So here's just the rules and conditions for that. And she'll also have an out of mana little message just to help the player out for communication purposes. So we'll go over here. Oh, wrong door. So we go over here, we'll go in here, and here's our little fire, and the fire will hurt us. And so if we hurt ourselves enough,
I'm gonna need some aid, and fast.
our character tells us that she needs healing, and that's just a little player voice that I actually made them myself. I downloaded Audacity and made a few voice lines so that I could have specifically what I wanted. So she has a voice line for low HP, she also has a voice line for low stamina, and she has a voice line for low mana. So let me deplete her mana. And here's the voice line.
I can't cast that without more mana.
And so she'll let you know that she's out of mana. So for the last variable, we have stamina, and so what I did for that was I created a little sprinting mechanic where if you hold down left shift, she'll move at about 1.4 times her normal speed.
Whew, I'll need to rest up before I can sprint like that again.
And she'll tell you when her stamina is low as well. And luckily for her, her stamina will regenerate over time. That's the only variable that will do that. And she can sprint with that. So I'll pop out of here and go back to my third-person character. It's quite large at this point. I've got a lot of things going on the third-person character. But basically, where the voice and the sprint are concerned, this all works off of an event tick. And so when you go over here, I have a little sequence so that it does all of this at the same time. And so then up here is just kind of what determines how much stamina she'll be depleting when she sprints. So as you hold down left shift, her stamina will go down. And if she's not sprinting, then her stamina will regenerate. And here's their little regeneration rules. And then if her stamina falls below a certain threshold, in this case, if she's out of stamina completely, she'll say her little voice tidbit. And then if she's also low on health, she'll say her little health tidbit. And then up here in the spell, she'll say her little mana tidbit. And so, about sounds, if I go down here, I have my little sound folder. And so the sounds were really easy. I found some open source free sounds on Mixkit and game sounds. And so I found, like on Mixkit, I found the little door creaky sound, and on game sounds I found this little kind of creepy ambience for the crypt. And that was easy. All you gotta do is just download those, put them in the content browser, and for ambient sound you just kind of drag and drop into your level. And then for door sounds, I just kind of hooked that up to my door opening node so that when you open the door, it'll play the sound in unison. Now for the player voices, however, I did something a little different for that. So I downloaded Audacity, which is just kind of like a little recording / audio editing program. And it's pretty easy to use. I'm not an expert at it yet, but it's really easy. You just record it. You have your little box of audio here, and then you can add effects to your audio. And then what you want to do is when you export your audio, you want to export it as a WAV file. So a WAV file right here, because that's what Unreal uses. So you can put in your WAV files in here, and it'll come in as these little black audio icons, and that's just kind of the source audio. But you want to also, for example, you want to create a cue for that audio. So using that sound wave, you'll create a cue. And what you can do is you can actually edit these cues, and it's just kind of like a visual aid for it as well. So if I open up the mana warning, for example, so you go in here, and here's the cue node, and you can add things like modulators, and you can use those to further edit your audio just to tailor it to the needs of your level. Like for example, I increase the volume of this, whereas I decrease the volume of like the ambience and the doors opening, just to make everything blend a little bit better. But all of that kind of comes together to just kind of add some depth to the level and to add a little bit more interest. I'm not a huge fan of silent characters, so I thought that it would be fun to add a little bit of, well, character to my character via voices, and add a little bit of character to the environment via the sounds. So that just kind of sums up what all I did this week via some of those YouTube tutorials. Just to kind of throw this in at the end, for the sounds, I used, I used a video by DIGM on YouTube. And then for the sprinting, I followed a couple tutorials by Matt Asplund and Ryan Laley. And of course, I will be including just some written documentation about the tutorials that I used and the sites that I used on my post. So if you want to go check those out, totally feel free. They're really helpful, and I think they're incredibly easy to.
Okay, so let's give this a critique. I have some thoughts on it, but Peanut Gallery online people, I want to hear some thoughts from you, people in the classroom. Let's start with the people online. Online people, what did you think?
It looked good. I think that one of the parts of the code was tied to an event tick, a large part of it, and that can be a little bit troublesome, especially in like code that's supposed to be real time. Well, obviously real time, but if you get that running on something else, maybe that might work better.
Which part?
Jane asked which part?
I saw it in the code somewhere. It was last presentation. So I'm not entirely sure where in the code it was. It must have been, I can't really remember off the top of my head.
All right, anybody else, any thoughts? Online people?
I was honestly impressed with the emitter and like the spell and how it looked.
Okay, in-class people, thoughts?
I guess I have two.
Okay,
First off, first one rather, the audio mixing is much better than the last one.
yes.
So that's a definite plus. Second one is not quite sure if you should keep referring to it as like a project on that, or like improvement this week basis. That seems a little strange. I don't know, that might be me. Going back to this week. You know, we're thinking I improved this week. I don't know if that makes sense or. Yeah, keep moving over. Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Get tripping over my work there, sorry.
So these are the points that I would have failed her for. So if we were going through and looking at this at portfolio, or if we were coming through and looking at this as on a job, I wouldn't have hired her. Straight up. We've talked about this repeatedly, and those critiques were pretty horrible from the entire class. So I'm not 100% sure if you guys are hearing me on this or not, but I'm really disappointed. So let's talk about this and let's break it down piece by piece. Okay, so did not state the problem. What have I told you guys about the most important part of the presentation to begin with? Why am I hiring you? To solve the problem. What problem did she solve? But in the video, did it say that she fixed the sound? What problems did she solve? So let's talk about if she had done this correctly. The first problem that she solved, she actually mentioned for the very first time at the 10-minute mark on her second video. The first problem that she solved was that characters without sound don't have or aren't fun. I'm just going to write aren't fun. She says it better, but that's the first problem. So her statement, her very first statement, is characters that without sound aren't fun. So the problems that she had, that's the original problem. So her solution to that is she found environment sounds created player sounds and voice overs. Now this next one is I'm gonna kind of jump around a little bit here because I'm gonna break this down until you guys start to do it right, because I got to sit through this for hours and hours at portfolio. And I don't want you guys to keep doing bad presentations over and over, because you're spending a lot of time doing this. And it's time that you could be spending doing it right. And I know that sounds harsh, but this is not getting any better. So I'm kind of done with the, oh, that was nice, you did this good part of this presentation. Get this right. All right, so she talked about how easy the sound was. We just talked about this the other day. Don't belittle your work. Okay, that's like rule number one. It is not easy to download a program and get it to work right off. So let's talk about who can and who can't use Audacity. Someone who can use Audacity has spent a lifetime on computers, has spent the last several years in digital media, has learned to go through and be able to locate and download software. has learned how to quickly either YouTube or read a light bit of directions and is able to then understand those directions and produce what they need. So if we talk about this a little bit like, don't belittle your work, and we say, can find appropriate, I can't spell, appropriate software or assets for project. And learn software as needed for a project. And integrate new methods of working into production pipeline without step-by-step direction. I don't know, there's got to be a better way to say that. But so she managed to go out and find appropriate assets. Then she managed to get those assets in game and working. So that can learn, find appropriate software and then, or find appropriate assets and then integrate them into the workflow, into an existing workflow. On top of that, she was able to learn or find new software that was appropriate for it, learn new software, and get something out of it that she could then input and apply in a new workflow. That's a huge thing. That's not, it was easy and it was simple. Do you know how many people can't do that? Most of the planet. There's a select group of people that have the ability to learn new software on the fly, integrate it into existing workflows, and get a professional looking piece out of it. That is a very small amount of people. So don't belittle your work. Just because it only took you 20 minutes to do doesn't mean that it's easy. It just means that you have a lot of experience that you bring to the table. And when we look at things like job interviews that say 3 years of experience, they want that because you have to do this on the job. And if you can't do this on the job, you're not useful to them. So Jane is showing a vast array of skills and then just saying, oh, it was simple. Not acceptable. Okay, so one, the first problem that she solved was characters without sound aren't fun. So she found environment sounds and she created player sounds. Number two, the second problem that she solved was creating visible cues for the player to better immerse themselves into play. So she created a HUD. Now, Jane, did you create that HUD or did you find that HUD?
Like the little.
Yeah, the little thing and the little bars and all that.
Yeah, I did that.
You drew all that. So we're just going to point out all the things that Jane didn't tell you that she did. Because Jane's awesome and she doesn't want you to know about it. Jane has what I like to call Southern girl disease. Okay, so Jane, or let's not say that, let's say designed and developed style. The style matched. Did it feel like that HUD went with that environment? Yeah, but it's appropriate or it's integrated. It's not. I can't get the right word, but matching. We call it matching stylized HUD graphics that that worked with the environment, the found with the down loaded environment. Okay, next. Built functionality onto the HUD to create visible gameplay elements. I don't know the right word for that. You can see that your health went down. It wasn't just your health was up and then your health was down. The next problem that she solved with visible player is, now did you create the emitter or did you download the emitter, or where did the emitter come from?
Yeah, the emitter was from Infinity Blade, and
Okay.
there's a title, there's a little card at the end of the video.
That's fine. So worked with pre-built assets to highlight game and player elements. And then worked with custom assets to further immersion. That being the sounds that she developed. Okay, so talked about how easy it was. So created a visible, audible. Let's just say the last problem that she overcame was design and development. She didn't even mention design and development, but let's just talk about, so what would you call when you create something that kind of all flows together and you're the one in charge of it? So I would call it something like, if it were in a movie, it would be the look dev. So let's just, for now, I'm just going to call it created an immersive style to show off in-game coding. I don't know, in-game interactive elements. So what does that mean? That means that she found a pack and used it to build an environment. It means that created elements that highlighted the look and feel come back to that. But there's the three problems that I think that she really solved. Okay. Now, let's go on and don't belittle your work. Gave a tutorial. Now, we've talked about this quite a bit, and we don't want to give tutorials. We're assuming that we're talking to a reasonably educated crowd about what's going on and that they're busy. They don't need a 10-minute tutorial on how to do medium stuff, okay? So instead of giving a tutorial, would have been better if she had pointed out interesting bits. Here, I want to talk about animation blending. I want to talk about unique or interesting code development. And finally, or actually for this one, it would have also been anything interesting with sound development. Okay. And then anything interesting with sound development. Okay, so we can take away this. So my thoughts are something like this is the talk that she needed to give for 10 minutes. Begin by telling what the 3 problems were that she solved. Then talk about how she went about solving them. And then talk about like how interesting each piece of that is. And then instead of giving a tutorial, point out the interesting bits of code that she used to create this. So basically what happened was Jane drove up in a Ferrari, told you it was okay, and then sold it for $10. So if she drove up in a Ferrari, told you it was a Ferrari, and asked you for the appropriate $300,000, somebody was going to buy it. Jane does awesome work. This presentation doesn't highlight that. Your critiques of her work worry me that you don't understand what a good presentation is. If you don't understand what a good presentation is, you can never give one. The way that we're going to develop our presentation skill is through critique and presentation. Does that make sense to everybody? So yes, I am beating Jane down, but it's not because I'm beating Jane down. It's because I want the class to do better. Marty refers to your presentations, because he's been kind of watching along with them, as somewhere along a high school book report. You know what your presentation shouldn't be for a job interview? A high school book report. Yes? So things that we don't want to mention. Now, these were all the things that we do want to mention. So things that we don't want to mention. Things that we don't want to mention. Okay. We don't want to mention school. This is not a forced labor camp. Okay, so when you say I did this project for, it just sounds automatically bad. The only reason that you did this project was because you had a deep interest in working with the software and making your skills better. That is the only reason you did this project. You want to work with a group, you want to improve your skill set, you want to further your understanding of the software, you want to make something cool. B. Don't talk about how good or bad the project is. You don't know who is looking at the work. If you tell them the work is bad or easy, they will believe you. You don't know who is looking at your work. If you tell them it's some of your best and they think it sucks, they won't think you have the ability to tell bad from good. So here what I'm talking about is, you know, on that new project that you just finished, that you learned that brand new software with, that you did the cool thing that took 100 hours that you're super proud of? It's the first time you did that. It's probably not good. You think it's good though, because you just did it and you're super proud of it. It does not mean it's good. It just means you just learned it. But you got that other software that you've been doing for 5 years and you can try to just kind of whip it out. And you think the project is mediocre because you know you can do better, but you hit time constraints. So the person looking at it might think that, well, that thing that you just did, that's their specialty. And they're like, well, that looks like a tutorial. That's crap. But that other thing that you do really, really well, they might not do as well. And that thing that you think is kind of mediocre, they might think is awesome. But you just told them it was mediocre. You ever walk into a car lot and the guy would be like, you know, I got a not bad car right here that I'm going to overcharge you for. You can be like, no. Or the guy's like, I got a great car. It's that one over there with the door falling off. You're also not going to buy that. You walk in, you tell the guy you want a car. He says, I have cars. Here, take a look at these 3 cars. What do you think? They're not good or bad. They are cars. They're all at different prices. That's something you understand, right? Don't tell people your work is your best work or your worst work. It is work that you did on a timeline within constraints. Don't talk about time. Students love to talk about time. Things get faster the more you do them. Somebody that's been doing 3D modeling for 20 years is probably going to be faster than you. And if you tell them it took you a week to do that cube, they are not going to be impressed. They are not going to be impressed that you stuck with it and did all those hours and got that right. But if you also tell them it took you 2 seconds to do that cube, they're still not going to be impressed because it's a cube. It should have taken 2 seconds. So you either look like you did it in the right amount of time, or you look like you did it way too slow. But either way, you don't look good for talking about the time that you took on something. Just don't talk about it. It took you until it got done. That's how long it took. So these are some things that I want to make sure that you guys understand. You are at the end of your sophomore-ish experience. That's kind of where you're at. You've already done all your principles. You've done the modeling for entertainment. You've done this. You have gameplay, or you have level design or game design, whatever it is, and gameplay and testing. That is the end of your game design courses. That's it. After that, you have production, maybe if you're lucky, and you have portfolio. Start thinking like a person who is applying for jobs. Start thinking like a person who is applying for jobs. We talked the other day, this project, when it goes up on ArtStation, will have a completed small level video, will have a 30 30-second highlight reel of your work. Will have a 10-minute breakdown of your problem solving skills. Will have highlight screenshots. Will have a strong written description. On ArtStation. This is going to be a portfolio piece. This is a group project that'll have a finished piece, a small breakdown that highlights what you are doing, and a big highlight that breaks down what you're doing. This is a gimme. This is your opportunity to get a step ahead. Everybody understand that? Can I say that any other way? I have now repeated that for like 2 weeks. Matthew Tallman,
Hello.
do you understand what I just said?
Yes, but can you also like put that in like a announcement? That way I can go back and look at it. Thank you.
Trying to think of where I should put this. Okay. We're going to move forward to the next person. I expect the critiques to get much better on the work and the format. I expect the next person to be good, but maybe not have all of this information directly. So you'll have lots of things to critique, and they can get better for the final. Yes? Are there any questions going forward? Okay, share screen. Am I sharing this? Share screen. Okay. Let's see, who is next? We just did Jane. Jared, are you here? I saw you earlier.
I am here.
Okay, I saw you earlier. Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You can share your screen and you can give your presentation.
All right, cool. Oh boy. Share sound, sweet. All right, I worked on combining 3 UI elements and from different tutorials. And I actually had like an overwhelming amount of personal things, like issues happen this weekend, and I wasn't able to spend as much time and effort as I would like. So I focused on getting the framework of all these down so that I can polish and add more better features into it later on. And I'll just play the video. Hello, my name is Jared, and I am in a group project with Corin Temple and Andrew Sheets, and I am in charge of the UI as well as some other things in the group. And for this project, I combined the tutorials of a compass, which you can see at the top, with an objective system, as well as a mini map, which you can see down here on the bottom attached to this map, and which is the next tutorial I followed, which was 3D UI element. And and I work to combine the mini map that updates while you move with the 3D UI element to be able to bring it up and off of screen later on once I add in animations, as well as add in some objective markers to let you see them on the mini map. Thank you. And then here are some screenshots demonstrating the different things. This project was a little bit challenging, less about blueprints, but more about problem solving and ways to combine, because it incorporated a lot of like details and small settings issues that I had to do a lot of research on to get everything to work together rather than just blueprints. And this is a camera that renders out to a scene capture. And then later I convert this render target, the texture target, to a material, and then apply that to an image in a UI element that constantly updates because it is a camera render capture. And then this mini map got applied to this map, this clipboard map here, that constantly updates. And then I went back to, these are the arms of the first person, and I had to get it in there and attach it to that so that it can update and show itself in real time. And due to the constraints of all these personal issues happening, I haven't been able to polish it and add as many features as I'd like yet. But there are a lot of things that I am able to add now that I have this framework done. That's it right now.
Okay. So.
Oh, let me say my 3 issues, my problems that I wanted to solve. Sorry, I forgot to say that. What my main thing that I wanted was I wanted a navigation system that wasn't static. Like I feel like in a lot of games when you look at things, you pull up a map and it's just like a PNG and you just kind of have to figure things out. And I wanted something to update it as you move. And I also wanted to create a way to navigate that doesn't rely on like a pause in gameplay. I wanted you to be able to see the navigation while you're moving so it doesn't create lulls in the gameplay. And I also wanted an easy way for the player to see exactly where the objective is, because some parts of our level are not going to be super hand-holdy, at least without the UI elements displaying where you need to go and what you need to do. So I needed a proper system to be able to lead the character.
Okay. So Jared gave a presentation. He had the 30-second video. It was not great. The work is obviously not done. So would you hire him? You got 2 applications so far because Jared and Jane did something very similar. That's the difference between like kind of going through and getting it and not getting it. Jared, are you going to be finishing this project?
100%.
So you're going to have to go through and finish up the presentation. Right now, you don't have enough to actually critique.
All right.
Okay?
Yep, 100%. Right.
Yeah.
For you rather than here. Just kind of going over like the list of stuff from earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's something specifically that we didn't go over. Should he have not have mentioned the other people in the group? Because like he called out me and Andrew. Was that?
I would have calling out you and Andrew is appropriate. You're working on a team though. It's not a group project. You're working as part of a team to create something.
Okay.
Keep it professional. Yes, Ashley.
I wanted to ask Jared so I was like looking at the mini map, and to me it looked like it stuttered really bad. Is that just the screen, or is that something you have to fix?
That is something that I know how to fix, but I wasn't able to this weekend. But yeah, that's something that it just stutters the way the UI widget when you move the character in real space, but it's something that I'm able to fix.
Okay, cool. I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're good. Thank you.
I'm willing to go next.
Okay,
It seems we've moved on from James' group to our group. So. I guess mine's on an ArtStation link that's in the chat. Or not the chat, the Skype.
Todd, I do got a question.
yeah,
I wasn't able to post my ArtStation on module 7.
that's fine.
Do you want me to go next so we can get me out of the way? Or do you want me to wait until everyone that posted is done?
Let's wait until Corwin's group goes. Are you part of Corwin's group?
No. Okay, I got you.
Let's knock this group out. I am sharing my screen.
Top video should be about a minute, bottom one's like 14 or so, but that one should be able to set up the one.
Hello, everyone. My name is.
Music in the background might be a little jank, but
That's fine.
yeah. Should be able to still hear me fine.
And this is a quick run through of the landscape environment I have made for gameplay interaction purposes, which includes things such as a spline mesh and spline outline, mountain deformations, a spline-based water lake, residual foliage generation, weather change, which affects the fog, particles, lighting, and atmosphere system, and creates snow accumulation, along with freezing the lake and ice physics on said lake, and the ability to revert said atmospheric changes back to the original form, which will remove the snow from the landscape slowly and thaw out the said lake.
Let's watch that one more time.
Hello everyone, my name is Corwin Temple, and this is a quick run through of the landscape environment I have made for gameplay interaction purposes, which includes things such as a spline mesh and spline outline, mountain deformations, a spline-based water lake, residual foliage generation, weather change, which affects the fog, particles, lighting, and atmosphere system, and creates snow accumulation, along with freezing the lake and ice physics on said lake, and the ability to revert said atmospheric changes back to the original form, which will remove the snow from the landscape slowly and thaw out the said lake.
Not bad. That actually is not bad.
Hello everyone, my name is Corwin.
Todd, could you share screen, please?
Oh, did I not share screen? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh, goodness. Share screen, share. Okay, can you see it now?
Yep.
Good deal.
And welcome to my
longer, more
more
in-depth breakdown of my environmental project. So this, as opposed to the shorter video, will be a bit more in-depth going into the code. So I'll start off here with the weather system that I use to be able to affect the atmosphere to help change the mood in game. And so I have it set up at a press for the P key just for testing purposes. And after making sure that the sky does in fact exist, it uses a flip-flop. So every time it's activated, it will alternate between A and B. So the first set goes here, is active true. Then it goes to a sequence, and the first thing this does is it lets this timeline start playing. And then once the timeline starts playing, it goes through and uses these set vectors to change the color of the sky, the horizon, the clouds, and the opacity of the clouds, along with the color of the light. Doing so with their each lerps that go from their standard colors down to a darker in order to set the mood to be a bit more dreary, and the alpha is the track on the timeline, so this happens gradually, resulting in an effect like this. You may have noticed there that the snow also starts to fall much more rapidly, and that's because that is what the second of the sequences do, but it has a 2-second delay to make sure that the clouds come in, so it starts looking like heavier weather is about to come before dropping instead of just having it go in. And then it gets the Niagara system and sets its spawn rate to 5,000 units. And then the opposite of the flip-flop just reverses the whole sequence. It makes is active false, plays this timeline reverse, so all of the colors go back to normal, and after another 2-second delay, it resets the float system to its default 1000. One other thing to note about the changing of spawn rates for my Niagara system is that the setup I use as a reference for this didn't actually use Niagara. It was a bit of an older setup that still used the now legacy Cascade system, which has different blueprinting nodes. So I had to sort of figure out how to do the same effect on my own. So it was just a bit of self-experimentation, but eventually I was able to figure out that problem and the best way to solve it. So the changing of spawn rates for my Niagara system is that the setup I use as a reference for this didn't actually use Niagara. It was a bit of an older setup that still used the now legacy Cascade system, which has different blueprinting nodes. So I had to sort of figure out how to do the same effect on my own. So it was just a bit of self-experimentation, but eventually I was able to figure out that problem and the best way to solve it. So the second half of the weather system is down here, which is where we use our is active. So every tick, it will check if the cloud change is active, and if it is, then it goes into this sequence, which after an 8-second delay to make sure that the snow has completely started to fall heavily and the environment finishes changing, it goes to this timeline where it sets 2 other parameter values, but this time it's the snow sharpness and the snow's bias, which are 2 pieces of the parameter system, which I will show in just a moment. And it uses alerp as well to set them from 0 to 1 over the time of the timeline alpha. And much like the other, the second part of this sequence as well, also after a short duration, sets the lake ice to be visible over the lake in the scene, and lets it be able to be collided with so that the player can walk on top of it. Much like the other half of the branch just reverses everything. So once this turns off, because the weather up here starts going back to normal, after there are delays, it will start reversing the snow accumulation from this timeline and thaw out the lake by making it invisible and unable to be collided with once again. Here's a very brief look at the snow system that I created in Niagara. The original tutorial I used to refresh my knowledge of the system created a rain system with it, and also was not able to be edited by an outside source, so I did have to change it so it would be a snow effect instead of rain, because they act differently, and of course set up in these parameters here a custom float that can be edited by outside sources and then link it to the spawn rate here, so it uses that number instead of a predefined number. And then here is the material parameter collection I mentioned earlier, which doesn't have all that much to it. It has 2 scaling parameters in it, one for the snow sharpness and one for the snow bias, which the weather blueprint that I showed off earlier affects. But what do these do? Well, that can be answered by going into my snow function, which is giving me a material function, as you see here, node that I used in my material. Right here, it's this particular node that is plugged in, you see here, to the base color, and the result comes out onto the base color of the whole material. But what does it do? So this function takes the input's base color, which in this case would be the grass, and then uses the number from the snow sharpness and the snow bias as the amount of blend sharpness and blending bias, and then compares it with alerp against a perfectly white color parameter of 111, uses the combined total of the sharpness and bias as the alpha for the alerp, and then outputs this result. So the secret to making snow accumulate over time is not using a snow material at all. This is my favorite part of setting up this demo, because I just like the idea that having snow accumulate onto the environment doesn't require any actual snow. It's more of a smoke and mirrors vibe. But of course, less materials means less processing time. It just simply manipulates the channels on your already available material. And despite the fact that the snow isn't real snow that accumulates over the system, it still looks pretty genuine here, as you can see. It piles on, and it really does make the environment more Arctic-like. And now you are in a snowy field, but in reality, there is no snow. And now right here, I have my physical material for the ice that covers the lake. And so this doesn't do too much for the player itself. It actually, and then right here, I have the physical material for the ice that covers up the lake when the weather gets harsh. See, it's got some friction. And here I have the physical material that is used by the ice that covers up the lake. And this is here for object interaction, which I have here. I've changed the friction and their modes in order to have a bit more of a sliding effect as opposed to a dead stop like a normal surface. But this does not actually affect player characters. And despite the fact that the snow isn't real snow that accumulates over the system, it still looks pretty genuine here, as you can see. It piles on, and it really does make the environment more Arctic-like. And now you are in a snowy field, but in reality, there is no snow. So in order to have the ice affect the player, I had to go into my third-person character and create a little script here. And so when it begins playing, it sets up a timer so that every 1 second, this function will go off. And that function is this custom event, which gets the character movement and then returns what type of ground it is currently standing on. If that matches the ice physical material, then it will set the ground friction and the braking deceleration in accordance to the numbers on the selective nodes. So on ice, it would set the friction to 0.4 and the braking deceleration to 2. And the default is what is used when it is not a specified surface. And this is done with a timer for only 1 second instead of on an on tick, because running this process continuously for every tick of the game can really bog down performance since it's constantly compiling ground data when the character is constantly moving. And I had to modify this a fair bit on my own because the source I got it from had it set up for a system where the ice basically took away player movement entirely. Once you hit it, you would just slide straight forward until you hit another solid object. And that was not what I wanted. I wanted more of a sliding to a slowed stop. So I had to create a custom version of that in order to have it work. And the way I got the ice to be to the effect that I wanted it was basically just modifying it and then playing on the environment myself to see how it responded to character movements until eventually I got this sort of sliding that I have now. If I stop moving here, you'll slowly slide over to a stop, which is exactly what I envisioned. Now here, I move on to the features of the landscape, starting with these 2 variants on spline blueprints. So this mountain here uses the spline as an outline, and as you see, it stays to the outline and fills in the rest. And over here I have my settings, the fall off angle, which can change the height of it based on how sheer of a drop you want, whether to use angle or width as fall off, the fall off width if you want to use it, the edge of said fall off, it's Z offset, And those are among the main ways you can edit this. You can also cap it, which flattens it out, but on an angled incline like this, it just flattens it there. But if I go down here, you can see now it's gradually up here, so it would be good for making a plateau as opposed to a mountain. So they are versatile if you know how to adjust them accordingly. And I also have some custom paint layers on here, which my reference did not originally go over, which simply is the snow on top. And having these pieces here will affect how it works. If I move the edge offset off, it consumes more. We'll bring it back, we'll bring it back up slowly until eventually, by going on long enough, it will remove it all entirely. The second type of deformation I have here uses the spline as the mesh as opposed to an outline for the mesh. So as you see, the spline is the middle of this path, and the mesh has formed around it and deformed the environment to meet the standards I've set. And so this one is capped to give it this flat look. If it were uncapped, it would become much more rugged. And it has the same features of fall-off angles and widths and offsets, along with curling, which both of these units have. But that is how you get these small deformations and general just noisiness of these mountainous shapes, so they don't look flat and, synthetic. Adjusting these will adjust exactly how powerful these curls are, and their tiling for how many times they appear and ordered. Then last, but certainly not least, we have the water body lathe, which I created using the brand new water system that they just implemented into Unreal 5. And so this follows the same basic structure as the other two spline bases. You see here, it's a circular spline that is containing the water. But how it differs is that it uses curve channels for its effects. So you have its ramp width, its edge offset, and its depth. And you see here, if I make it deeper, it also expands outwards because it keeps it to an equal ratio. And so now that I've made it much deeper, if I dive in here, you can see it goes down for quite some time, as opposed to the original, which you can already see the bottom of here before even getting into the water. My reference for this went over the system as a whole, but didn't spend too much time on any one particular feature. So I messed with this myself in order to get it to the desired shape and deformation of the landscape, since each water body has to be custom tuned. And also, see here I have a wave attenuation and maximum height, which are both at 0 because they also all start with waves in them, but it wouldn't make sense for this lake here to really have any waves, so I had to put those down so they wouldn't show up at all. But if you come in, you can see it's still moving around, so it's hardly just a still, flat plane of water. But that about covers everything. I hope this was informative.
Okay, online people, critique.
I got a critique.
But of course,
Yeah.
more materials means less processing time.
Well, first off, I just want to say that the work is really good. You sounded like you had a very confident tone in yourself throughout the whole presentation. One thing that I just felt was could be improved on was like your second video. I felt like it, I don't know if this is an unfair critique to make, but I felt like it just dragged on a bit too long. But just looking at it from like the outside looking in, I'm personally someone who hasn't like experimented with particle effects at all, but looking at the work you did, it looks really good, and it makes me want to experiment with these systems more. I think you could improve on the video just by touching on the highlights, just going over like the unique thing you did, like going over like your process for getting there. But other than that, I'm thoroughly impressed. Good job.
Yeah, I do want to say, I felt an immediate sinking feeling in my stomach when Todd said that James was a bit too tutorial-y, because mine followed a similar structure. So I kind of went into this knowing that would be a critique, but obviously I do know how to fix that now. So
Good. Like I said, the ones that we're seeing today are still going to have some of the existing problems.
yeah,
And always remember that my critiques are crushing. I mean, there is nothing easy about my critiques because I am not teaching a class. I am helping you get a job. I don't really care about the grade. I would give everybody A's or F's. It doesn't make any damn difference to me because nobody looks at your GPA. Nobody looks at school projects. They look at your portfolio. So keep in mind that these critiques and these individual projects are totally unimportant. It's the end product that matters.
also, I genuinely have no idea why the video got all messed up halfway through.
And we're zooming through YouTube, back through YouTube, over to God only knows.
I have no idea why.
God only knows. Okay, other critiques of Corwin's stuff. Yes.
A positive, you did a really good job in your short video of highlighting each specific problem, and you also in both videos did a good job of adding what all you had to do yourself. So it's like we had your tutorials, but it's like X tutorial didn't cover this thing, so I had to think about myself. So that really, flexes your skill set. And then my negative is that it feels like you kind of drug on just a little bit. I know that sounds mean, but
No, it doesn't sound mean. It's helpful because you're trying to get him to stop doing it now. doesn't feel like he's turning on and skip half of the video. Don't think of it as being me. Don't critique your critique.
Honestly, I agree with you. Honestly, watching it back now, especially after he made the list, it's kind of obvious that it goes on a little longer than it should.
The work he has is really impressive.
What else? Do you have an infographic with this?
Yes, it's right below that video.
Why didn't it start the video kind of thing?
Because I didn't think to do that.
Okay, well, that would have definitely been a good, either in the 30-second video or the 10-minute video or both videos. If this had kind of started it out, I'm going to cover from scratch snow, mountain grading, splines, create water, and from scratch blueprints. That would have been a great way to start out both videos. So remember, your infographic isn't a one-off. I'm not teaching you something as a throwaway skill. That's what I call it. You do it once to please a teacher for a project, and then you throw it away. This is not that. Everything that we're going over in this class, whether you're a modeler, a UI artist, a coder, whatever, all of this is going to carry through to other presentations. So when I go in and I give a talk, this is a great thing to have up on the screen. Just lets everybody know what I'm doing. This is a great thing to use to get your message from in your head to in other people's heads quickly and efficiently. That's the idea. You just need a bunch of information to go from you to them. Yes.
I was just gonna ask. I guess I was gonna ask you to look at the I guess quite literally like the picture right below this one, because I have some of the blueprint pictures. I was wondering if that format, the way I did that, was more in line with what you wanted with the more advanced video. I have kind of a blurb about something, and then it's documented in the picture.
So what is important on this screen? What should I, as someone that's hiring you, what do you want me to take away? What is important? Remember, I've got 2 minutes to go through your entire portfolio. If I don't play any of the videos, and I only just scrub through your pictures, what am I gleaning here?
I guess it's a system that affects player friction based off surfaces.
Does it say that?
Yeah, right below it.
Does it say it in the picture?
Yes,
It does. Could it say it better?
probably.
How? Tell me why the picture doesn't have a label, a graphic, some information on it, something that highlights what you're showing. Remember, you want to make it as easy as possible for the person that's trying to look at your stuff to get everything there. So suppose instead of like just this, you've taken player friction. Player friction as the top line, and then the second line using physical material system to using a physical material system. And he had put that label somewhere up there, like about the size of the word blueprint on here. He put it in a nice box like we did on there. And then he highlighted character movement kind of thing, and maybe drew a little, remember the little arrow looking things that we were looking at before, and kind of showed how that was working. Is it more work? Yes. Does it take time? Yes. Is it going to make you look better than the person who's coming behind you that didn't do that? Yes. Is Corwin's work amazing? Yes. Is his video amazing? Yeah. Are his screenshots amazing? Yeah. Great work shown badly is bad work, right? So, am I being mean to Corwin by critiquing this the way that I am?
I don't think so.
Listen, would somebody walking into this classroom right now just think I had just shredded him for like 15 seconds worth of work when he has like obviously 10 or 20 hours into the tutorials, the project, and then creating the presentation? Yeah. But can you destroy 20 hours worth of work with like 10 seconds worth of that? Yeah, you we can. Everything, Jonathan Hounshaw has a saying that everything in the design has to have a purpose and it has to be clear. Does everything in Corwin's presentation have a purpose? Yes. But God, sometimes it's hard to see. If I came across this, I would kind of look on the bottom, first half of the environment control to push the weather. Okay, great, so you can do that. What did you do on here that is interesting?
Well, I guess I set up a blueprint to change all the different aspects of the environment with I guess, a single call function and it flip flops, so it's a universal environmental change system.
Stop. What's the problem you're solving?
The environment's not dynamic.
So you want to create a dynamic environment. Dynamic environment. Dynamic environment that can, I don't know, somehow you want to say freeze and unfreeze. So what I would do, if it were me, and I was actually on my ball game, which usually I'm not, I would go through, I like your changes the environment using time over, I like that. But this gets a little spaghetti to me. It's hard to just glance at it and be like, nailed it. Maybe show a picture of this, of the effect that we're talking about and get a highlight thing. Remember, your goal is always to get people to think that what you're doing is cool. The spaghetti is interesting, but getting them to see the cool is hard. So how are you going to get them to take this to figure out what you did that's cool? I know it's just a different way of thinking. This was interesting. I'm glad you put this slide in here. This slide doesn't do it justice. Tell me what's going on here, the way you said it in the video.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's a material function that manipulates.
That's not the way you said it in the video. Tell me what you said in the video, and I'll tell you why this is so cool.
It makes snow without any snow.
Yes, but in the video, you said, I really enjoyed this aspect of it. This was cool to me because we used smoke and mirrors to create snow. That just tells me you've got a passion for this. This in itself is super not interesting. But the fact that you bothered to learn to do it in a low impact way that will optimize FPS and you're into it, that's a person I want on my team. So how can you convey that excitement that you felt with this slide? And you know what I mean when I say a low impact way? You don't have like another Niagara system that's creating snow on the ground. You're creating a low CPU or GPU usage by doing it this way.
Yeah.
You're not telling me that. I mean, I'm just saying that you've got great work and you're excited about it, but is it coming through in the presentation?
Not exactly.
So just keep in mind that when you're showing pictures of this, this is 100% better than what you were showing 3 weeks ago. Because before you were just showing unlabeled spaghetti that went on for days. Now you're showing bits of code that I can recognize that are labeled. Now show me bits of code that are labeled and recognized and explain to me why they're cool. See how we're building on this every time we go through and do it?
Yeah, I get what you're doing now.
First, I just had to get you to stop throwing spaghetti at me. Now that you're done throwing spaghetti at me, I can look at it and I can see what I'm seeing. Yeah, like this is good, And as long as I'm a good coder, I can look at this and be like, okay, so on an event tick, he checks to see a sequence is happening. He hits a delay, sets a variable. That variable is something with the collision, and then he plays, there's a timeline that plays, and that timeline does a set scalar for a parameter. So this is the weather report that uses lerps and timeline parameter access material to make the snow accumulation. So I understand it. And I mean, I can quickly read it. But even I, who am pretty decent at blueprints and design the project, it still took me 30 seconds to kind of read through this and figure out what was going on and how it was happening. Can you simplify that?
Probably.
If you can simplify it, simplify it. If you can make it cooler, make it cooler. Show me a picture. Link a picture with this. Do something. Keep it going. Label it. Point out the highlights. Dumb it down. You don't have to dumb it down by not using cool words, but you have to dumb it down by just getting that idea out as fast as possible. So when I come through, I want to see something cool. This is maybe cool, maybe not. This is way too deep in the presentation. And then these start to, if I'm just scrolling through, they're not catching my eye. Yes? Okay, I don't think the abuse, actually, Corwin, who else is on your team?
Andrew.
Andrew, are you ready?
I prefer to do it next time, for being honest.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, I think the abuse has been hard enough for today. I feel the desperation and fear in the air. That's not what we're going for.
Honestly, it was exactly what I expected to get out of it. So.
Good, that's awesome. Remember, I'm not too worried about this. I just don't want to get to portfolio and have you guys have problems.
Yeah.
I want you guys to breeze through portfolio and use that entire last semester to be applying for jobs. Because I want you to leave here and not be unemployed. I want you to be starting a new job. I don't want you to take a year and be unemployed, living with your parents, getting yelled at for leaving all the food on the counter. I want you out of here, employed.
Don't be my sister.
Yeah, pretty much don't be Corwin's sister. I don't know Corwin's sister. I'm sure she's a nice person.
It's hard to find a therapy job in the mountains area, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of having to move down to the coast.
Let me look at Austin Yuri. So Austin just came through. He's in portfolio right now. This is what his current portfolio looks like. He's a senior. He's only got 5 pieces, but they're all good. Does that make sense to you? This is his latest art test. We're gonna work on making this better here in a minute. But this is a pretty straightforward portfolio. Nothing but good. There's not too much information where I'm being beat over the head with stupid. This needs to get fixed, but let me look at Dakota. What is Dakota's last name? What is Dakota's last name? Garrett. Is this the right Dakota? This is the right Dakota. So he's working on changing this, but he's got something simple, pretty easy to see what he's done. Little write-up. Pretty easy to see what he's done. Little write-up. Pretty easy to see what he's done. Little write-up. Let's look over at, actually, I want to look over at I'm not sure if Pano is going to be under Pano or if it's going to be under this. All right, so David's going to be under this. So we get over to his portfolio. All UI character. He's got it split up pretty straightforward. Come through, quickly see his drawings, quickly read about what he's done. I can tell in 2 seconds he draws well. Let's look at his UI and game design stuff. Starts off, this is a bad infographic. Talked to him about this already. Let's see if he can figure out 1 minute. Already bored. Not doing the stuff that we're talking about, because every time we do this presentation, we make this better. So he's got some room to improve on that. Where is his sound? Why does he have no sound on any of these? He's used animated GIFs in order to show off some stuff. I think he can do better on that. So, and then this one he's actually getting pretty close to being right on. So he's got a little 49-second video showing off his stuff. I think we can get better on his videos there. So let's look at the last one really quick. See what he's just put up. So he just completed this the other day. This is to show that I know how to create and experiment with shaders. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. Distance between two vertices, normalize the value, clamping the value. It's pretty good. The only thing we seem to be missing is a video that shows him using the stuff. Let's look at this. What's he got going on here? Tells me what he's doing.
This custom node is a function made in C++ that can be called easily in Blueprint with a single node. These puzzles can be easily edited in the level without having to worry about interfering with the programmer's work, and if the player gets the order of the puzzle wrong, he will have to try again until he completes the puzzle. When the power-up has been collected, the player will be able to run twice as fast than before.
So some definite room on that, but I like the fact that he started out with C++, told us what it was, moved on, showed us the example, moved on. So these are good and bad. Yours are going to be better. Every semester we get better, we get better, we get better, we get better, we get better. The standards get higher, the standards get higher, the standards get higher. So this is what they did. When I come through and see yours in a year and a half, yours are going to be better, right? Yes, Ashley, they're going to be better.
Fake confidence till it becomes real.
Yes. Okay. Everybody's doing great. I don't think anybody in this class is doing bad work. I think everybody's work is good. I think we just need to optimize how we show it in order to really capture the interest of potential employers. Okay, so leave on an up note, especially Jane, who took the brunt of the critique today. Jane, your work is always awesome. It's just going to be a matter of getting you to show it to be as awesome as your work is, and stop being humble. When you show your work is not the time to be humble or cocky. It's just the time to deliver the information. Okay, everybody take some time, redo this, go look at it, go forward. The people that have already presented, except for Jared, are done with their presentations for this part. When we go through for the final, you probably want to clean them up a little bit. People that have not gone, your critiques will just continue to get harsher and harsher until it's done. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions about where we are or what we're doing?
So we can start, moving in and making strides on our big project.
Yes, if you have gone and I have given you the thumbs up, which everybody that has gone so far has got the thumbs up, go ahead and start work on your big project. And if you haven't gone, keep working on this until you get it right. Questions, comments? All right, I'll see you all on Monday at 10:30-ish. Have a good week.
All right, thank you.
You can probably go ahead and get